Welcome to Chain Reaction, the Foreign Policy Research Institute's flagship network of podcast series examining the political, security, economic, and social trends shaping Europe and Eurasia. Throughout the year, we're talking with experts about developments in Russia's war in Ukraine, the new European security order, the past, present, and future of the Baltic states, Russia's political economy, and great power competition in the region. Join us each month for
Bear Market Brief.
The understanding of Russia, which is broadly as Russia as a great power that has its own special path, that has a mission, and that needs a strong state, and a different path to that of the West.
I think when you look at these other industries, what you find is that there's a lot of pain built up in different parts of the Russian economy. Some of it's only going to be felt over a longer period of time.
Baltic ways.
There were the countries that when the war started, they were willing to be, those voices of moral conscience.
The continent.
I think that this conflict today proves that we are able to go past grievances and that we are able to look into the future, into the common future together.
Report in short.
This is the real Achilles heel of Putin's mobilization.
And of course, our flagship, Chain Reaction.
These two countries are interacting militarily or have been interacting in several different conflicts. And in some cases, they're on the same side, and in some cases, they're not.
New episodes are available each week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to Report in Short, a bite-sized podcast where we bring you the latest in scholarship from FPR's Eurasia program. On the docket for today, the past, present, and future of the Russian UAV industry. Joining us today is the report's author, Pavel Luzin.
Pavel, welcome to Report in Short. If you could introduce yourself to the listeners, now's your opportunity.
Hi, Aaron. I am Pavel Luzin, a researcher of the Russian military sector and Russian foreign policy, and of course Russian political economy, because this field is related and to the military sector and to the Russian foreign policy. Briefly speaking, the Russian military policy, Russian foreign policy derive from Russian political economy.
Yeah, I would profoundly agree, but we're going to focus in specifically on drones today, both in their use in war, but also in some of the political economy considerations. So let's start really high level, just for listeners who are curious but may not be familiar. What role are drones playing in Ukraine now? Has war fundamentally changed? I see reports that things are going to be different from now on with drones, or are they more of a tactical innovation that just allows armies to do things a little more conveniently? How does that shake out for you?
So, firstly, there is no revolution, there is an evolution in using drones. Evolution of previous decades. Secondly, the visible effects of using drones, FPV drones, first-person view drones, some loitering munitions, and so on. These visible effects derive from one interesting fact. The fact is that both sides, Russia and Ukraine, use the huge amount of drones, especially commercial-grade drones, for filling gaps in sophisticated and costly precise munitions, precise weapons. They are filling gap in reconnaissance capabilities, like satellite reconnaissance, like sophisticated unmanned aerial vehicles aimed for reconnaissance, and so on and so on. So normally, the armed forces like American Army, NATO armies, they use military-grade drones, aircrafts, satellites, and they're successful. When the armies like Russian army, Ukrainian army have a gap in these fields, they extensively use commercial-grade drones just for filling gaps. So we should understand this correct. And again, there is no revolution, there is an evolution.
Let's talk about some of the content of the report. I guess before the technical questions, tell me about how the idea for the report came together. Obviously, drones are being used in Ukraine, but what sparked this specific focus?
long story short, the idea of this report was born during spring of 2020. But because of some deficit of information, because of lack of time, I was able to start working on this just on summer 2023. But by summer 2023, other colleagues from other American think tanks like CSIS, CNA, and so on, they published their report. They covered the issues of using American-made, European-made electronics in Russian drones. They covered the issues of Iranian drones, and so on and so on. So I focused mostly on Russian industrial base of UAV, of drones. I covered the issues how the Russian military see the drone problem, and briefly I covered the evolution of drones in the Russian military doctrine, in the Russian military thinking.
Well, for listeners, there's a link to the report. So if this topic is curious to you, please check it out below. Your report details a number of struggles Russia has had in procuring and integrating drones into the military. Tell me about some of these. I think there's two categories. There's the institutional political economy piece, and there's the military institution piece, although those may both be political economy. But break down some of these struggles. What's wrong?
What's wrong? There is a huge problem that the Russian armed forces are hierarchically centralized structure. And maybe it is not the problem for us, like people who are against the Russian aggression. It is a problem for Russia. And when you have a vertical power structure, vertical organizational structure, hierarchical structure, so you cannot transfer best practices from one single military unit to another. You cannot be flexible. You cannot create network-centric warfare. And on the other hand, we see Ukrainians who are successful in horizontal relations between units, who are successful in relying on volunteer movement, because the most of drones currently are being supplied by the civil society of Ukraine. And the Russian army also tries to rely on volunteers, but the Russian authoritarian regime was struggling against any type of civil society activity during the previous at least 2 decades. So that's why Russia faces a problem, organizational problem, how to transfer best practices of using drones from one unit to another, how to integrate the drones into the forces structure, and how to supply these drones. Because it's hard to supply cheap commercial grade drones by the government or by the Ministry of Defense. Because of what? Because according to the manuals, these drones may be used for a year or 2 years. But in reality, the most of drones live just 20 minutes or 15 minutes. And how to supply tens of thousands of drones every month to the armed forces, considering also the fact that the most of these drones are imported from China or assembled in Russia from Chinese-made components or from components from other countries. So it's impossible in terms of bureaucracy. But on the other hand, Russia does not have a very well developed civil society who may take this responsibility. And Ukraine has civil society, and this civil society supplies Ukrainian armed forces with tens of thousands of drones.
Final question for today on this short podcast. News, at least here in the States, maybe the same in Europe, definitely has turned pessimistic about Ukraine as the year draws to a close. And I recognize that news about the war tends to be either way overconfident or way too pessimistic. That's been true for Russia coverage for years. But my question is, with Russia's struggles with drones, does that even matter to the outcome of the war? If Russia's not as efficient as possible, does that mean anything for the battlefield or political outcomes in your view?
So firstly, I'm not too pessimistic like many other observers, because I do see a systemic fact. Firstly, Ukraine is going to fight. Ukraine is fighting for survival. Ukraine is consolidated in terms of society, in terms of political power, in terms of trust between society, political leadership, and the armed forces. And Ukraine has support from the wide coalition of states. And the leader of this coalition is the United States. And I see the amount of support from the West, from the United States, from Europe, from Japan, from South Korea. And I see, despite any current problems in American Congress, despite all of these problems, the West will continue its support of Ukraine. And also this support is being realized in supply chains, because Ukrainian civil society needs imported components to create domestic drones, FPV drones, and so on and so on. And if we do see a coalition of states, if we do see a systemic effort against the Russian aggression, I presume one day we will see a victory. Because Russia is acting almost alone. Russia does not have civil society. Russian power structure is ineffective at all. And the Russian economic capabilities are limited enough. So I'm optimistic here. And also, again, these drones on both sides, they fill gaps in precise weapons, in reconnaissance, and so on. As soon Ukraine will increase the amount of precise weapons in its possession, when Ukraine will get aviation from the West, like F-16 or combat helicopter, long-range missiles, or just additional several millions of artillery rounds, as soon Ukraine will be a winner of this war, and the drones will play a supportive role in Ukrainian efforts for liberation of its territory, defeating Russia. So I think we have to be optimists here. And on the other hand, we do see Russia with all its troubles, and we do see that Russia replaced sophisticated and advanced enough cruise missiles with Iranian Shahed drones, with swarms of Iranian Shahed drones, navigated by cell phone network. And also we see that there is no any significant ally of Russia who is going to help Russia with solving all Russian troubles. So I hope that one day, maybe in 2024, 2025, whenever it will happen, I think one day we will see the more advanced Ukrainian armed forces than the Russian army. The Russian armed forces will continue to rely on commercial grade drones, and Ukrainian armed forces will increase the amount of precise weapons, increase the amount of advanced drones, and so on and so on. And one day Ukraine will win this war.
A fascinating prediction. Pavel, thank you for joining Report in Short.
Thank you for the invitation.
The Report in Short podcast is brought to you by the Foreign Policy Research Institute, that's FPRI, a nonpartisan think tank based in Philadelphia. For more information on this initiative and on many others, stop by the website fpri.org. We'll catch you next time.